Welcome, welcome, welcome. Special treat. You're going to be able to see some of the background research and analysis that I'm entitled to every other day. Routinely, I talk to Jason and I ask for his insights onto political matters. I'm not always able to read everything. When you want to stay up on all the details and data, politics, and especially about independence movements, you'll realize there's just too much for one person to handle. And so you have to rely on others who are also heavily involved and able to analyze this information, stay on top of it, keep it all in their head, and provide insightful reviews of what it is. Today, I'm going to interview Calexit LLC CEO about the prospect of selective prosecution and its meaning for the stability of democracy. Specifically, we're talking about the court cases or one specific court case against Donald Trump. And does it mean that democracy is being upheld? We'll get to that in 1 second. But first, hello, I'm doing an interview with Calexit LLC, Jason Wright. We're going to get to him in 1 second. But first, I want to introduce the subject. So this is Jason Wright. Interview about the prospect of selective prosecution, its meaning for the existence of functional democracy. And here's what we mean. Here's the article we're basing this off of. Hochul tells New York businesses not to fear about Trump verdict, nothing to worry about. New York Governor Kathy Hochul addressed New York business owners in an interview and told them there was nothing to worry about after former President Trump was hit with a $355 million fine and a ban on conducting business in New York for 3 years. Hochul joined John Catsimatidis on the Katz Roundtable on WABC 770 AM, where she was asked if other New York business people should be worried that if they can do that to the former president, they can do that to anybody. The governor responded, I think this is really an extraordinary, unusual circumstance that the law-abiding and rule-following New Yorkers who are business people have nothing to worry about because they're very different than Donald Trump and his behavior, Hochul responded. So we have some questions. Before we do that, I do want to point out there was the Kevin Leary, Mr. Wonderful, from Shark Tank interview on CNN. Where they were trying to get him to say that this was a great day for business. And he straight up shut them down and said, no, all businesses are going to flee New York and you will cause an economic catastrophe for New York. That seemed to catch the CNN reporter completely off guard. And she said, well, won't be happy about an ethical environment? And then that's when Mr. O'Leary said something. Basically, we've heard a version of this from Trump. Everyone does this. All the businesses in New York do this. And now you've told them, if you do this, we can literally financially destroy you in one sweep. Not 16 different moves, not 5 different moves over different years. One move, one mistake, and we can take billions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And so O'Leary was like, look, you make investments in business based upon risk. You have now told every business, if you do what is standard practice in New York, you will literally have all of your finances wiped out. So if you're a 100 millionaire or you're a billionaire, gone with one mistake. That was causing massive problems. And there was a lot of business people talking about leaving New York, to which the governor got the question and had to respond because she was worried about losing her economy. What does this mean? What's going on? What are they saying? What is Governor Hochul now admits the government was biased? What does that mean?
Yeah, well, this is very interesting. So if you read what she said at first, right, it's law-abiding citizens of New York have nothing to fear, right? Because Donald Trump and his behavior is so much different. Well, so this says to me, one, she very clearly doesn't understand business and how it goes on in her own state that she is the governor of, because she thinks that Donald Trump broke this rule, therefore he's a criminal, but everyone else breaks the rule and they are perfectly law-abiding. 2, to me, this says very clearly this person does not understand what law is and what like the rule of law is all about. Like a law on the books that's been codified and everything, it is not actually considered a law if it's not enforced. Take, for example, the US flag code. It is a federal law. It is codified, but no one enforces it because to enforce it could trample on your First Amendment rights, which is pretty antithetical to America. So rather than do something so un-American, they would rather let us all burn the American flag, spit on it, say how much we hate the United States and we hope it's destroyed or whatever we want, right? Freedom of speech within reason, right? It's you can't incite or threaten, none of that stuff. But the burning of the flag is not actually considered incitement, and it's considered a form of protest covered by First Amendment. Now, it is a law, it is a federal law, but it is not enforced. And so when you ask federal officials about it, ones that like have heard of it and know it, a lot of the times you'll get the response that, well, yes and no. Yes, it's on the books. No, it's not really a law because it's not enforced. So this rule, this law that Trump allegedly, I guess he's been convicted now, so we can say he did break this rule or law or whatever, right?
So they say.
Yeah, I do expect it's going to be overturned, and largely in part from what Governor Kathy Hochul said, which is pretty much an admittance of there was no crime, yet we have chosen to make this a crime so that we can enforce it on just this one individual. Now, that is called perversion, right? Perversion. It's a blatant manipulation for the purpose of, doing something it's not meant to. Perversion of the law. Blatant perversion of the law is actually a pretty serious thing. And the governor of New York admitted to having done it. Admitted to the world. How she's still currently the governor, I don't know. Much like DA Fani Willis, like you got caught embezzling and with all this fraud. And
neither one of us are Trump fans. Just for anybody watching, we're not Trump fans. Just get that out of the way.
Yeah, no, I like Trump as much as I like Biden, which is absolute zero.
We're not Trump fans. I'll just leave it there. And I was showing you the clips from CNN where O'Leary literally said everyone does this. And this is one of the top most respected investment advisors in all of America, respected by almost everybody with business. And if you want to go watch that, you'll see the CNN anchor was just completely caught off guard, like just stars coming out of her face. Like, what? What are you talking about? Like she had no idea the economic calamity and the unequal justice they just did.
Yeah, and the legal ramifications.
Yeah, and
you're an elected official who's saying, hey, I just committed a massive crime. Do you not realize how bad that is? Usually when people commit crimes, they try to cover them up because they're like, oh, hey, I just committed a crime. Oh, better not let anyone know. And she's just like, hey, yeah, everyone, check this out. It says either she has zero understanding of the law Like, I'm not a legal professional, and I know that's a horrible, horrible thing to be doing. Not only that, but it's either she doesn't understand the law or she does not care. And if she doesn't care, it's probably because she figures she's gonna get away with it. My rule in life is when people think that they could get away with it, they will usually try.
That's the question. Yeah.
Is it ineptitude or is it villainy? Is she dumb or is she evil? I mean, I do this with Biden and with Trump and Harris and the Clintons and the Bushes all day, every day. Wow, are they just dumb or are they just evil? Either answer, they belong anywhere other than running things in the government.
It did look like when she did. So she was on a radio program. This had just happened. She had been celebrating the verdict against Trump, and then somebody says, "What about what Kevin O'Leary said, where everybody does this? You decided to prosecute one guy instead of the hundreds or thousands of people who do this all the time, and they all know this. And now you just told them that the doing this is so horrible, given that they've done it all the time, that they can lose all their wealth in one sweeping move." When I listened to the radio broadcast, it sounded like she was caught off guard. And like somebody was going, "Do you realize you just tanked the New York economy?" And she had to quickly go, "Let me say something to make sure that I don't have to deal with the stream of money running out of my state. We're never going to prosecute you because you're not him. So don't worry." And I'm sure that's all she was thinking of was, here's a serious criticism. We're going to have a lot of financial loss. I need to cut this off right where it is. And in doing so, she admitted selective prosecution, which is illegal and unconstitutional, and literally one of the things that the founding fathers complained of the British doing.
That's exactly where I was going next, is that there were some people who gathered together little over 250 years ago and they decided that they were tired of inadequate representation, unfair and undue taxation, having other people's opinions and beliefs forced upon them, or else having, the person to the left and the person to the right are doing the same thing that they're doing, but maybe one of them gets beheaded by the king because the king doesn't like him. It's more because the king doesn't like him than it is about what they were doing. That means that, all citizens are always at risk. Always. It's not about law and order. It's about, Heil King Henry, or, Trumpler, or Heil Biden, and his
That's where we're going.
Beautiful border wall. It's the Biden border wall, folks. It's not the Trump border
wall. Yeah, that's good.
Just another shade of Trump.
That was something you had, Jason developed that marketing angle for the Calexit movement. He was the one that invented that when Biden first got elected, and we noticed some parallels between him and Trump policies that he had denigrated earlier and then enacted or allowed to continue within his first 100 days as president. And Jason said, just another shade of Trump. Everybody talked about Trump, the orange one. Here's Biden. He's another shade of that. Last question. Donald Trump has been hit with all of these different lawsuits, including the one that we're talking about now. How is it that you have been seeing this trend build to the point where you finally claimed he will most likely win it when highly paid professionals with years of study and degrees could not? So you're looking at these court cases, and I've seen some interviews, a lot of Democrats saying, well, convicted felon, first ever American president, convicted felon. That's super horrible. I'll also see people say, well, there was polls that they took last year or 6 months ago saying if he's convicted in the future, I would not vote for him. Now, that was taken in the past. We don't know. It seems to me that you're attempting to rebuff those statements or that analysis. What is it that you're seeing, and why is it that successful prosecution of Trump actually means increased likelihood for his successful appearance as the next American president?
Indeed, I am here to rebuff that whole bogus
Rebuff.
claim.
Rebuff.
So, first of all, folks, when Democrats vote, who do they vote for? Mostly the Democrats. But if somebody decent enough comes along, like, I don't know, Senator Sanders, right? He was able to pull a lot of support from the middle, the left, even a little bit from the right. You know, the not so far right. Dems were willing to vote for him in very large numbers. Not really many Republicans. Very, 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 very few. When Republicans vote, folks, how do they vote? They vote Republican down the ticket. Even if it's someone that they don't like, someone they don't agree with. If it's the Republican nominee, they give that Republican their vote and their support. When it comes time to vote, who's got the higher voter turnout among their registered voting base? Is it the Dems or is it the Republicans? It's the Republicans. By and large, the Republicans, they turn out en masse and they vote together as one. That's hard to beat. You got to be really on top of your game if you're going to try to beat that. You can't be doing things like manipulating the justice system. You can't be doing things like taking up the other guy that your base says they hate and hate his policies. You can't take that other guy's policies and start running with them and use them as your own. Even if you were the one who started putting kids in cages, you know, it's kind of a no-brainer, which just makes me wonder what the Biden campaign is really doing. Like, are they being run by a block of cheese? Like, how do they not know that doubling down on the border wall is going to make Trumpers say, ha ha, ha, he thinks he can buy our votes by doing this. Well, thank you for doing what we wanted done. We do appreciate that. You're still a clown and we're still not voting for you. So he will have helped Trump to win, hoping that he'll get some of their votes when they don't do that. You're more likely to see a Dem vote for Trump than a Trumper vote for Biden. In fact, polls have been showing that, you know, the Democrats have been hemorrhaging voters for the last few years. And not just hemorrhaging voters, but a lot of those voters have actually gone to the Republican Party. I know people who didn't vote for Trump the first time around who are so fed up with Biden that they're like, yeah, I don't like Trump. I don't like the things he says, but I'm going to vote for him to spite Biden because he sucks that bad. Trump's horrible, but he's at least better than Biden. Trump is the lesser of the two evils in a lot of people's minds right now. I know it's hard for me to fathom it, but it's there. And when you work in analysis, you can't choose what you're going to disregard or regard. Just like when you work in law, you're not supposed to choose what you're going to prosecute or not. Or I'll prosecute this person for that, but not that person. Oh, this person's a rapist, and so we're going to put them away. But that other rapist, no, we're going to leave them be.
I did find it interesting when they were saying first convicted felon, as if he was the first person to ever commit crimes. right? That every
Yeah.
president before him never committed crimes on this scale, never was brought up to this level of justice, and he's the first one to break the threshold. For a fact, Ronald Reagan was caught doing the Iran-Contra affairs, and the special prosecutors who looked into that declined to prosecute because they thought it would be too hard for the American psyche. So they actually said, yes, you did it. We're choosing not to prosecute. We can go to Hillary Clinton with James Comey, with her server and her emails, where they said it was reckless and careless and never should have been done. And then he said, she's going to get a pass, but if anybody else does this, we'll prosecute you. That's literally a definition of selective prosecution. And then we can go to Joseph Biden with also illegal, stolen, secret files, more of them in more locations than Trump ever had, although he didn't argue with the prosecutors.
And for more years, because some of those were from when he was vice president.
Right, which is even more illegal than doing it as president. And they said for a fact, we think you did it, and we are going to decline to prosecute. So when I see people say first president ever convicted, first person this level ever convicted, presidential candidate, I'm like, that's just because they declined to prosecute. There's 3 times where they literally said that. Literally. You cannot then claim or suggest that he's the only guy that ever committed crimes that got to that level. That's a lie. Just straight up, we know that fact. Those 3 people did those 3 things, and were given complete passes by the justice system, the FBI or the Justice Bureau. So that's a fact. That
Well,
means
can I make a point here about these crimes that he's been convicted of? The 34 counts of this one crime that he has been convicted of. 34 times of one crime, not 34 different crimes. He didn't,
right.
Get a gun as a felon and then go into the store to shoplift and then also hold up the store and also shot somebody on the way out and also no. He did a thing with the records, with the financial records in his company, and they didn't like it. They said that was, not supposed to be like that. You broke a rule. So here are your, 34 counts of having broken that rule. Usually, and like this is for like no name Joe Schmo who goes and commits the same crime 34 different times, 50 different times, right? Usually they drop it down to the 5 most or 10 most serious counts of this charge. Not let's find every last individual single time that we can and charge him as every single one of them. Usually they're like, we've got a decent handful of them here. We'll just slap them with that. And that's for average Joe Schmo. So why is it that someone who, usually the presidential frontrunner in an election year in the United States of America would not be prosecuted and they wouldn't do any sort of legal action because they don't want to put off the image of election interference? Just saying. The Hunter Biden trial that's going on now that was stopped and the story was caught and killed, right? That's another thing that they're saying Trump did wrong, was the catch and kill of the stories, which literally every freaking politician in America does that. So what are they going to charge and convict every single elected official? Oh, of course
They'd
not.
have to start with George W. Bush because he put out fake stories about John McCain in order to take him down.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah.
That happened. That's election interference. Absolutely did it. Well recognized, documented. Everyone admits that now. As far as I can tell, zero talk about prosecution of him.
Yeah. This is the first time in American history where they've said, Yeah, so what if it destroys the image of America? So what if it rips down the veil that, keeps people believing and hoping in their American future? We've got to go after this former president. First time ever that they've said that. Not only that, but now the thing that like is kind of the linchpin in the whole thing for me. None of the crimes that they have charged him with, none of the crime he has been actually convicted of, are the type of crime that actually will legally prevent a person from being able to run for an elected position in the United States of America, let alone not the kind that would prevent Donald J. Trump from taking his seat in the Oval Office again should he actually win it again. He could be a convicted criminal, convicted felon, could have done all sorts of crazy crap. If the people still vote for him large enough that he wins, he is considered in good standing with the majority of America and meets the in good standing qualification. He's obviously older than 34. And he was born in America. And he has not been convicted of certain types of election crime. That's really all that matters legally as far as can someone run for president. That's it. He's older than 34. He has nearly half of the country's support. So, that says, it's not just, two people like the dude. It's hundreds of millions of people like this dude. He meets the good standing. He meets the age requirement. He hasn't been convicted of the crimes that would, prevent him. And then, he meets all the qualifications still. Surprisingly, he still meets all of the necessary qualifications to run for president of the United States of America. If that doesn't tell you how screwed up America is, I don't know what. I mean,
it makes
literally,
sense.
he could have shot and killed someone. That's not, as long as it wasn't his opposition candidate, then it's not election crime and therefore not going to prevent him from holding presidency.
Well, I mean, it makes sense to me because many presidents have done illegal things. Here's Reagan.
And many presidents have dueled and shot and killed people.
Well, 50 years ago, yes. I'm talking about the last 6, 7 presidents. They were, Obama, what was it? The special forces who peed on a guy, or the rotting corpse under Obama that just was like taken away. There was also the Afghans who were put into a metal tin box. So when they went in there initially, they put like 30 Taliban in a metal tin box and left them out in the sun, so they died of dehydration. That was under Obama. So, no charges there. Guantanamo, Abu Ghraib, etc. George W. Bush lying to the world and the UN, violating the cause, the FBI, the CIA in on it. Here's Ronald Reagan with the Iran-Contra. And it's specifically talking about the Democrats just didn't want to prosecute him because they felt it would look bad. Not that they didn't think there was a crime. They felt it would look bad, and they were politically worried because he was so popular. That's not the same thing as they didn't have enough to charge him. They chose not to. So right there, you cannot say this isn't selective prosecution because this guy got off. And then look at the Comey statement with Clinton and look at the special prosecutor statement with Joe Biden. They literally said, yes, they did it. We're going to give them a pass. So that means now, if all these other people got passes and Trump doesn't, we're doing selective prosecution.
And that, folks, that means that he really could have this all overturned once he's back in the Oval Office.
He might.
That's the thing to consider. He really could win it, especially the worse Biden does. The more he's like, yay, we'll build the wall. We'll equate Latinos to burritos and tacos.
Thank you.
The more he does that crap, the less likely he is to win. The less likely he is to even place or show in this race. There's only 3 candidates, really. I mean, yeah, there's Jill Stein, but I mean, I'm a Green, and I even know the way the electoral system works, there will be maybe at best 1 or 2 Green electoral votes ever, but chances are they will all be either red or blue because the states set the rules for their state's electors, and the vast majority of them say, well, it's only red and blue. Green's not allowed, yellow, gold, right? Not allowed. Only the red and the blue may be voted for by the electors. Yeah. So, sorry, RFK. Sorry to all my Greens. It's going to be Donald Trump versus Joseph Biden. Joseph Biden's support starts way down here.
Yeah.
Trump's support starts up here. He only has to do this much work to cross into the majority threshold. Biden has to do this much work just to start actually being able to play ball with Trump.
Yeah,
This does not bode well. And again, I like Biden as much as I like Trump. I hate them both equally. They are both terrible, inept leaders.
Yeah, I believe Trump's a racist and a sexist. I think Biden's done some equally.
Yeah, I mean, Biden voted against desegregating the United States of America. Tell me how he's not racist. They're both racist, xenophobic, D-bag, no place running a government type people. Both of them. But that's all we're getting. And so again, since that's all we're getting, we have to look at this is going to be the race. Who is going to win it? Likely going to be Donald Trump. Once he gets back in, who do you think he's coming for first? Not me. I'm a Green who's like, I don't like Biden either.
Yeah,
no, he's coming for the people who abused the system to persecute him, not prosecute, because that has legal standing, right? That's rooted in legality. Persecution, however, which is what this was, is blatantly misusing the legal system to get someone that you don't like. Well, I don't like the guy either, but I mean, if I was in a position of power over the legal system, you can bet your sweet bippy I wouldn't be committing crimes with it. I'm smarter than that.
They should have convicted him for January 6th, and they didn't. That was distinct, over the top, beyond anything any presidential candidate had ever done remotely. And I'm a fan of history. That was very, 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 very unique. And you could go, no one's done anything like this. And that was, I felt, the strong statement. I was waiting for the conviction. Never happened. And then they moved on to other things. And I'm like, that's just not going to work because you're these other reasons. One quick story, if I may. Thomas More, I told you this, I think. So the idea of law and having laws in our society comes from one guy. His name was Thomas More. He was a priest. He lived in England. He was executed by the King of England because the king wanted a divorce and he wouldn't grant him one. That's why he's famous. He also wrote a book called Utopia, A Perfect Society. And he was projecting how we could have a perfect society in the future in Europe. What made a society perfect? His whole book was about there was a universal set of laws that even the king had to belong to. That was the big radical idea that he had, was There's not just laws for the public and then the king can do what he has. We have laws and everybody has to abide by them. Like, that was a radical concept. Nobody was talking about this. He was the first one to do this.
All of society.
Yes, all of they had, and he said there was 2 requirements. The laws had to be universally applicable to everybody, and the second requirement for utopia to be achieved was that everybody had to believe that the laws were fair. So you can't eat a banana peeling it from the left leaf instead of the right leaf. We don't make that a law because people go, that's so arbitrary. How is that wrong to eat a banana the way? You can't murder. Everyone agrees with that. You can't break into someone's home and steal their stuff. Pretty much everyone agrees with that. You cannot physically go beat someone up because you had an argument with them. Pretty much everyone agrees with that. I think you can see the concept where it's fair. Everyone goes, yeah, no one should be able to do that. And we have it for everybody. And he said, you have to have these things or you won't have a legal structure. And I think we've forgotten both of them. They have to be applicable to everybody. You can't have a rich upper class that basically is immune to prosecution on these things outside of Trump. And you can't have laws that you interpreted the law in a way that half the country thinks is fair and the other half thinks is largely illegal, like the case where the bank, the German bank that supposedly he defrauded, said, we don't feel defrauded. We're not a victim. We're not going to prosecute. And then New York said, oh, well, even though we don't have a victim, we're going to go ahead and prosecute him for victimizing somebody, which basically never happens. And even the German bank was like, that's bizarre. That's what I'm talking about. You can't have it where it's debatable. I'm not saying whether it's good or bad. I'm just saying this guy wrote this book 500 years ago. All legal systems on the planet come from this idea. His ideas were never overturned over centuries of different thinkers looking at him, including people like Shakespeare, Thoreau, you name it. Everybody had time to look at this. Nobody disagreed. And they said, yeah, that makes sense. If you have laws and half the population thinks it's not fair, even if that law is fair, if you have half the population thinks it's not going to work. So, and that's where we are today. I've seen so many commentaries of people say the Trump trials are being viewed as good if you hate Trump and bad if you don't look Trump. I was watching Crystal Ball on Breaking Points say that nobody is looking at the legality of these arguments and if they are technically legal. They're looking at it, did my side win or lose? And that's both sides. And that is absolutely not how you can have a stable legal structure that survives the test of times. And this comes from the guy who invented the whole thing and who basically all of the Enlightenment period, 200 years of European thought, which created the Western order as we know it, backed up. And here we are in America violating those basic precepts and thinking everything's going to be fine. It just strikes me as a historical level of ignorance you typically don't see except for once every 1 to 2 centuries.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly there. I think you can't really say that there is law and order and that it's effective and then turn around and blatantly misuse and misrepresent the law and use it to abuse citizens. Like it'd be like saying it's impossible to walk backwards and then walk backwards.
Right.
It's impossible to cross your eyes. Oh, look at this. It's kind of asinine. It makes no sense. I would say it's inane, but it's not exactly pointless. The reason they do it, there is a purpose, there is a point. And it's just that's a nefarious purpose. It's malicious intent. So it's not like, they're doing it haphazardly or like, oh, oops, I made a mistake. No, they're very blatantly, very seriously corrupting abusing, misusing, mishandling, manipulating. There are 1,000 words in the English language that can be used to describe these actions, and none of them are going to make you feel great about it. I mean, the word manipulation, right? That's an icky thing. Abuse, it's an icky thing. Misuse, blatant misuse, it's an icky thing. So why is it that we're accepting this from the powers that be within the government? There is either justice or there is not. You can't have justice for some and not for others. I mean, literally, great minds in the last 100 years or so in America have made this point and, been met by, thunderous applause from Americans who are like, yeah, now that's America right there. You can't have justice for some and not for others. Justice is justice. Well, what happened to that America? Are we all still here, or do we still believe the same things? Do we like freedom? Do we like justice? Do we like knowing that if someone comes and tries to kill us or our family member, that they might suffer legal consequences for their actions? Yeah, usually, yeah. I mean, it's not a revenge thing. It's I feel safer and less like I need to worry about someone might just randomly decide to kill me when I know that there is a law, there's a whole bunch of law stating that killing people is wrong, it's bad, and it's against the law, and that you will suffer all these sorts of consequences if you should do this thing. It makes people less likely to do it. Now, incentivizing all of this crime, right? Incentivizing all of this blatant manipulation of the judicial system. One, it impedes justice from actually being able to occur. Two is that it really infringes upon the thing itself. So it's hard to imagine, but I guess you could picture it as the cannibalism snake, where the tail is being eaten by the head and it's just in a circle, right? The vicious cycle. Kind of akin to that, where the justice system abusing itself takes it out, cuts its own feet out from under itself, and thereby makes it less effective. And, an example of that is if they do try to prosecute anyone for this sort of thing that they just convicted Trump of, well, yeah, you can say, but we've got precedent. Trump was convicted. Yeah, and we've got precedent to have it thrown out called the governor admitted to having abused the law in order to do that.
It's pretty bad.
Which means the people are not going to have the faith in the justice system. Which means that those who are criminal sorts are actually going to be maybe feeling less de-incentivized. They're going to maybe feel like it's not quite so risky of a thing to go out and commit whatever crime they like committing now, because there is no justice. So keep that in mind, because I can almost guarantee that he is going to get back into the Oval Office, and then he is going to work. I mean, not him personally. He's got a whole team of people for that, which makes it more likely to happen.
Yeah.
If he was doing it himself, I'd be like, oh, great.
Yeah. Well, we'll end it there. We're going to do the last one on the blueprint. Just for the record, It took me 30 seconds to find Hillary not being prosecuted, Biden not being prosecuted, Reagan not being prosecuted. It was not hard to find. 30 seconds on Google, and yet you won't see anyone in the news bringing this up now. I find that weird. I find that very strange because I know they have Google. That's weird. All right, we'll leave it there. I'll send you a link in a second.